Good morning, everybody. This is Diggs. It's another beautiful day out here in the Pacific Northwest, and today we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about Diofield Chronicles. We're going to talk about how the game plays, whether or not it's going to be worth it for you as an investment. I think for most people, this is going to be a little bit different of a game than they expected. It definitely was for me. We're also going to talk about some of the console differences between the Nintendo Switch and PC. So let's go ahead and dig in. So right off the bat, I would say that Diofield Chronicles was not the game I was expecting it to be. I was expecting it to be very similar to Valkyria Chronicles 4, potentially have some elements of Final Fantasy Tactics in it. What it tended to have more in common was actually like an RTS game. It actually felt like an RTS game that you pause, that you kind of move. The controls weren't really intuitive. And I definitely had a different experience playing it on PC with keyboard and mouse than I did on the Nintendo Switch. And of course, you have a difference in graphics and quality, but you also have a difference in terms of selecting units. A lot of this game, you are micromanaging specific units, you're pausing frequently, and the keyboard mouse system, the PC way of doing that is just 10 times better than if you tried to do this with a controller. For any of you that have maybe played StarCraft back in the day on console when it was released on consoles, it's very similar to that. And when I first played this on the Switch, I thought I would be able to do this no problem, right? It's going to be fine. It's going to be either like Fire Emblem, Valkyria Chronicles, something like that. But it really just turned into something else. So let's get into the gameplay and I'll show you guys what I mean here. If we go ahead and start the mission here, this is the demo. We are a bit of the ways in. You'll notice that first off, you can get a view of the whole area, and the maps themselves have not been particularly remarkable in the demo. There's not been things where, I would expect like, something more elegant, something more interesting. A lot of the times it's just capture, defeat the enemies, capture the tower, defeat the enemies, capture the tower. There are time-based missions associated with it. There are also other missions as well. So that's one thing that I was a little surprised with. I wasn't expecting this to be a game where I would be timed on sending my units out. You'll also notice when we do start combat, it's very similar to Final Fantasy XII in many ways, but it's also it has some problems. So let's go ahead, hop back, and let's go ahead and get to the initial screen here. So I'm going to select all my units, and you'll see I can kind of choose all of my units here. But if I wanted to issue commands to like a single unit, if I wanted to like do this and just do that, notice how it unpauses the game immediately. I immediately need to pause the game again, select another unit in order to issue another command. And so this is something you're going to be doing frequently, is you're going to be doing this, you'll hit pause, you'll switch to your unit, right? You'll adjust the angle just perfectly, you'll select the unit. So if you're playing on console, you're not going to be able to select units that fast. You're not going to be able to cycle through like I am with the number key because it's on the Z and R. So you're just setting yourself up, if you play this on console, to be in a bad situation. Now, once all of my units here get going, you'll see here we're going to have the enemies probably trigger forward, I'm guessing. I'm actually going to lure them back if I can. So I'm going to go trigger them, and then I'm going to run back. And most of the gameplay isn't like this, but here we go. We'll start off. You can select skills. So you have 3 different types of units. You have mounted spellcasters. You have basically like melee, and you have ranged units. You can only have 4 units on the field at a time, and you can have 8 units technically. Technically, you'll be able to have kind of like an adjuvant unit where, Fire Emblem did this, where you can kind of pair the heroes together and their skills kind of stack. You can also switch these units as well, but you don't really see much of that right now. And granted, we are in the beginning of the game. You do have some environmental effects. So for example, this explosive keg, when I do trigger this, is going to go ahead and blow up. Now, immediately, Like, if I don't select a command for my units, they are not going to automatically attack or automatically defend themselves. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and select attacks here. And we're in the midst of combat here. I'm going to keep selecting my units because, again, the ranged units will attack, but my melee units will not. Now, there's no real good way to, again, kind of get into this situation where you're going to be kind of attacking multiple times, right? So you'll notice every time I pull up this menu, every time I need to go do a skill, I need to pull up the unit, I need to hit the space button, and then it automatically defaults me to 1, and then I need to click back on the unit again. So I'm back on this unit, and here I am. And this is basically how the combat goes. And on PC, it can be pretty fast and quick, but you end up in a situation where, oh, I just killed my units. You end up in a situation where a lot of the times you are literally just micromanaging your team. You're pausing the game nonstop, and that's not a terrible thing. It's not the end of the world. If so, like, you see how my knight literally was just doing nothing there? There's no warning. There's no warning that your knight's gonna do nothing. There's no indication that, like, this unit needs to take a turn, right? So it's gonna auto pause for you. It's just not an intuitive system. And that doesn't mean it's a bad system necessarily. I think this could be changed in time for launch, potentially, depending on how they do it. I don't know how they would fix it on, for example, on Nintendo Switch. I also think the graphics difference between Switch and the rest of the games, and PC and probably PS5 as well, is huge. Like, it's such a graphics difference, even just from when you are going in between, like, cutscenes and stuff. The cutscenes were way more enjoyable on PC, and it was so much better. And you'll notice my archer's going a little bit slow here. I could pop more abilities. We'll pop Stun Shot here just to showcase. But this is basically the meat and potatoes of the game, and I could be positioning my unit behind. I could be, you know, getting that attack bonus, but this is essentially the game, and this is where, you know, it's fun. I think it's an okay game. It's just not what I was expecting, and I really, when I saw this, when it was announced, I really got vibes of like Valkyria Chronicles 4 mixed with other tactical games, and it's just not hitting that for me. It's not difficult. It's not like I'm playing on normal difficulty right now, and literally I have a character dead, and it's not a big deal, right? Like, I'm just proceeding through the mission as planned. I'm level 10, the enemies are level 5. There's one other level of difficulty I could play. You see here, I could run through, just get my positioning right here, and kill a bunch of enemies that way. I'm gonna pause again because I want to select what enemy I'm gonna target. I'm gonna pause again, switch back to him. We're gonna go ahead and pop an AoE here. So this is the gameplay loop, and there is an element here. If you do go to your base, there is a base building element. So let's go ahead and go to the base building element and talk about that as well. It's very much I would say, worse version of Fire Emblem's home base. It feels like there's some cool things going on here. It feels empty. You don't wander around. Like, I would say with Garrick Mach, it at least had you going around doing stuff, but this is kind of the extent of it. You have people in here. You have your practice mission shop. You have your skill shop, which is pretty cool. I will say the skill tree is pretty awesome. There are definitely some really cool skills that are available. What's interesting is that you can buy these skills, but these skills also come on weapons. So you can end up spending a skill point here, and it'll be completely useless because you get assassination on your main character through their weapon. So, like, in the beginning of the game and in the beginning of the demo, these feel almost useless to me because I already have these skills, I'm upgrading them, and it's like 30% cooldown decrease. Okay, Like that's like there's no identity really behind it, right? And that's kind of part of the problem here. The shop is pretty basic as well. You come into the shop, you would think like, oh, accessories are going to be a little bit different. They're literally just like defense. So you can stack defense, you can stack attack. There doesn't seem to be any abilities associated with them. There just really, you know, isn't much at all. And I don't want to slam this game because I do really like, I've had fun playing through the PC client, through the PC demo. I've really enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy my time as much on the Switch demo. I think the storytelling's okay. I think the storytelling can carry itself. I think it can, you know, go through, especially when you start getting these 2D cinematographics. But that's also kind of the thing, is you jump between like 4 different modes of storytelling, which is really interesting because you have the standard mode right here where you're interacting with people, right? You have the 2-dimensional mode where all of a sudden, it's very mobile game-like, where all of a sudden it's showing like 2D images and graphics. You have the in-map cinematic mode, which is like you're on the map and it literally looks like an RTS, like your RTS characters there talking to other people. And then you have like the CGI mode, which looks good, but also looks a little like too good. Like the CGI is just like a little, like, you know, when you're looking at CGI and you're like, this isn't really believable. That's part of what's going on. And the main characters are not really that interesting. I'll go ahead and show you. Like, this is a main character right here. This is another main character right here. This is the side character. Far more interesting, far more fleshed out here. She is way cooler than any of the other characters. This is a main character, right? And then guess who is the other character that you get in your party? That's right, the other guy over here, who's actually your archer, and he is super cool. His character development is much better. So it's interesting that, you know, you find yourself in a situation where, you know, the side characters are better than like the 3 main characters. The 3 main characters show up with like hoods on in the first cutscene, which kind of leaves the impression that they didn't know what the characters were going to look like when the game was launched. It's just kind of a worse version of Fire Emblem with a really weird RTS strategy element to it. Am I gonna play this? Is it worth $60? I don't think it's gonna be worth $60. I'll buy this on sale and play it. I've had fun playing this, and hopefully there's gonna be more challenging missions later on in the game, or maybe the difficulty is gonna be more well balanced from the demo. Overall though, I gotta say, not the best game from Square Enix. Anyway, everybody, thanks so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.